More on the UN Secretary General's comments and the response to the EU migrant crisis. We are now joined by Francine Uenuma. She's from Save the Children. She's the Director of Media Relations and Communications. Just back from Sicily, which is the epicenter of all of this. So if you would, for our viewers, give us a scene setter. Just how bad is it there?
There are landings almost daily. I was there when you'd have 1,000 migrants come in. One ship had more than 600 people. Pregnant women coming off first. Some of the teens telling us that they had been at sea so long they had been drinking seawater to survive. So incredible numbers of people, almost 40,000 this year to Italy alone, and that's on top of 170,000 last year.
I was reading an article about this. A gentleman there at one of the fish markets referred to the migrant issue this way. He said, Sicily was a beautiful gem. Now it's going down the tubes. Basically saying that it's just a mess there. Is it really that drastic? Is it really that bad? What are some of the things, your takeaways, that you'd like the viewers to know?
I think the thing to keep in mind is that while people are landing in Sicily, this is really a European problem. They are not necessarily staying there. They're trying to reunite with family, perhaps in a place like Sweden or Germany with relatives, and to go elsewhere. And so, those who land, this is really their first, port of entry on European shores. But the reason you're seeing this conversation at the European Commission level is that it really affects all of Europe.
What about Ban Ki-moon's comments today? What do you take out of those? Obviously, he's saying that the naval operation shouldn't be as key as compassion.
Absolutely. I mean, when you talk to people about what they've experienced on the way, not just crossing the Mediterranean, I think we see the drownings and that's what comes to mind, but actually many have crossed desert, conflict zone. For us, we're working with teenagers and children who've done that journey alone. So I think when you have that conversation with these migrants, you see why there is a need for compassion and for legal and safe mechanisms for them to resettle in Europe. Our concern with the military approach is that you have a lot of people who are in Libya as the situation has deteriorated, and we don't want them to be in further jeopardy of being humanitarian collateral.
One of the officials there at the EU today said it's not about words, it's about deeds. Are you seeing enough as regards to deeds? And we are still seeing a lot of pushback from some countries. They don't want the quotas.
Right, and I think, one of the things that we're calling for is to have a burden sharing, because as I mentioned, so many people are coming to Italy, so many people are coming to Greece. They can't bear that burden alone. The Italian Coast Guard, of course, very stretched. We need to have not only resettlement in the countries, but also a shared burden for going out into the Mediterranean and rescuing those migrants. Again, Mare Nostrum, an Italian operation that wrapped up last year, was going out and bringing these migrants in daily, sometimes, as I said, 1,000 people. So really the shared responsibility needs to be on land and at sea.
These horrifying journeys you talked about, people getting away from war zones, then getting on these ships, and just unbelievable what they had to go through to get onto the shores. You're talking about teens and kids going through this experience. Talk to me about their needs and what you have to do to service them, because it's not just about the fact that perhaps they haven't had enough food. It's the psychological damage, I would think, of a journey like that and what they've had to endure.
Absolutely. When they take this journey, they're very vulnerable and they're very alone. So some have been subject to child labor. They're often exploited, beaten physically, of course, harmed and dehydrated and along the way. But also they've seen violence against their friends. Some of them have been held for maybe months in Libya, subject to violence. And you'll have somebody extorting their relatives, calling and saying, we're going to continue to hold, your son as psychologically on somebody who's 14 or 15 years old, who's not even traveling with a relative or a guardian of any kind. So by the time they land in Europe, they've already experienced something really unimaginable.
Francine, thanks so much for shedding a light on all of this. Really appreciate your observations.